The outline for today's webinar is to cover the HESI mission and the core principles, the HESI programs as they impact in the scientific community, HESI programs and how they operate, HESI organizational governance, and lastly, why should I be involved and how do I join? So first, HESI's mission and core principles. The basics of HESI. HESI brings together academic, government, and industry scientists to improve science-based safety evaluation. All HESI scientific programs are conducted by issue-focused tripartite committees. We are a 501c3 organization. That means we're a not-for-profit scientific organization based in Washington, D.C. HESI is the global branch of the International Life Sciences Institute, and we were established in 1989. Our core principles include the following: tripartite or three-part scientific engagement. Those three parts consist of academic, government, and industry, and this tripartite approach is at the core of all HESI scientific projects and the HESI governance. Second, by pooling experience, data, resources, and diverse perspectives, HESI scientific collaborations offer benefits that independent research and participation in other groups cannot. And finally, HESI contributes technical knowledge and innovative perspectives to the scientific community via workshops, peer-reviewed publications, etc., as part of all HESI projects. Again, this slide really depicts the tripartite. You've got academic, government, and industry. And again, tripartite is a core principle of HESI. You can see that we've brought the three circles, the three different sectors of the scientific community together. And it really is that convergence of academic, industry, and government that reflects the space in which HESI operates. As such, HESI recently adopted that convergence of those three spheres of influence has a major part of our new logo, which is now shown there in the middle of the slide. The new HESI logo really is derived from that tripartite approach. So we're tripartite throughout. The HESI governance requires that at least 50% of our board are drawn from the academic and government sectors. All scientific program direction and design is guided by this tripartite input. And this is the mission statement for HESI. This has been our mission statement for at least 5 years and probably longer than that. Our mission statement is to stimulate and support scientific research and educational programs that contribute to the identification and resolution of health and environmental issues of concern to the public, scientific community, government agencies, and industry. Of concern to the public is really critical because that's very consistent with our legal status, legal charter as a 501c3. We're obliged by that charter to bring the science to a point where it can actually benefit the public. How does HESI achieve this mission? HESI provides a forum for government, academic, and industrial scientists, as well as other leading experts, to work collaboratively to develop innovative and high-quality approaches to resolving complex scientific issues that are of common interest. HESI operates via financial and in-kind contributions from its participating organizations and individuals. The benefit of experience. As I mentioned on an earlier slide, HESI was founded in 1989, so we've been a resource for tripartite collaborative efforts for over 20 years. We have dozens of scientific programs and projects underway within our committees. HESI is respected internationally for open, balanced approach and for our ability to reach consensus. And HESI has a demonstrated ability to create partnerships that promote synergy among government, academic, and industry colleagues, enabling effective problem resolution. We believe that because of that experience that is directly linked to the impact that our scientific program can have. The HESI generated science, a few highlights. We've had more than 150 peer-reviewed publications since 2006, and these publications have been published in a number of high-quality journals, including the American Heart Journal, Toxicological Sciences, Critical Reviews in Toxicology, and the Journal of Pharmacological and Toxicological Methods, just to name a few. We've had greater than 50 workshops and scientific presentations at international scientific meetings in 2010 to 2011. We participated in the qualification of novel renal biomarkers by the FDA and the EMA, and it's important to point out that this was amongst the first biomarkers thus qualified. HESI is cited as providing valuable technical input for national and international regulatory approaches, and the HESI staff, committee members, and board are invited to participate as expert contributors on international panels, including the IPCS, the SOT, the WHO, the OECD, and more. Second part of the outline is to talk about our engagement and our impact in a diverse scientific community. On this slide, we've listed the 42 corporate sponsors for HESI. You easily can recognize many of the names on this slide, and in fact, it reflects the multinational corporations that support and sponsor the HESI activities. It's important to point out that this list includes a number of pharmaceutical companies, chemical companies, agricultural chemical companies, petrochemical companies, consumer products industries, as well as contract research organizations and providers of technical services in support of safety assessment. Again, we have 42 corporate sponsors at this time. This slide just lists the 2011 governmental experts that are participating in HESI programs from the following agencies. And I won't go through this list, but I did want to highlight that we have government participation from the United States, from Europe, from Canada, and from Asia. And a couple of these organizations are participating in HESI activities as observers, specifically ECFAM and EFSA. But I think it's a very impressive list of government participation in a number of the HESI activities. Similarly, this next slide shows the 2011 academic institutions that are participating in the HESI programs. Again, on the left, you have those academic institutions that are international, mostly from Europe. And on the right, we have all the academic institutions that are based here in the United States. Third part of the outline is the work that HESI does via its scientific committees. Again, in the upper left-hand corner of this slide, we've again emphasized the fact that everything we do is tripartite: academic, government, and industrial scientists. We also include scientific experts from other sectors, including a number of NGOs. Going down that left-hand side of the slide, you can see that the HESI staff manage this process, manage the scientific committees, and that the HESI Board of Trustees oversees the process and progress of all of our technical and project committees. And this is done under the aegis of the board program, strategy, and stewardship committees. Now you have a number of bullet-pointed items and circles going around the HESI logo. Starting at the top, we have the initiation of a committee. The HESI Scientific Committee is formed. There is a series of steps that are undertaken to execute the project and to ultimately publish and to determine the next steps in terms of the science. Safety challenges are identified. A tripartite team is convened to discuss the issues. And the academic, government, and industrial scientists from that tripartite team partner in the design and also commit to the project scope and to the project funding. You can see this is an iterative process, so it continues to circle through basically the identification of the questions that will be raised, the development of a plan to address those questions, and finally to develop a communication plan to go ahead and get those results of that effort out into the public domain, either as peer-reviewed publications or as reports on the HESI website. So again, an iterative process. But again, emphasizing that every step of that process really is focused on that tripartite interaction between academic, government, and industry scientists. This is the HESI scientific portfolio in 2011. We've depicted the various projects according to some key target areas. Starting at the upper left-hand corner, translational biology. We have 4 committees engaged in translational biology, including the cardiac safety evaluation, biomarkers of renotoxicity, developmental and reproductive tox, and immunotoxicology. Going to the right in a box labeled New Technologies, we have imaging for safety evaluation and genomics and mechanism-based risk assessment. Going back to the left-hand margin under the box labeled Environmental Toxicology, again emphasizing the fact that HESI stands for the Health and Environmental Sciences Institute. We have 2 projects. First, the Animal Alternative Needs and Environmental Risk Assessment, and second, the methods for a tiered approach to assess bioaccumulation. Traveling over to the right-hand side of the slide, new approaches. We have the biological significance of DNA adducts, and a brand new project, the adjuvant vaccine safety and risk of autoimmunity. And finally, in rounding out the scientific portfolio is a number of projects aimed at improving our assessment of risk. Starting at the top, risk assessment in the 21st century, something that we refer to as the Risk 21 project. Second, the relevance of positive results from in vitro genotoxicity testing. Third, protein allergenicity. Fourth, distinguishing adverse from non-adverse and adoptive effects. Next, assessing risk from mixtures. And finally, evaluating causality in epidemiological studies. All of these projects would be highlighted on our website. You can also contact just about anyone on the HESI staff if you want additional information about any one of these projects. But again, I think it's important just to note that it is a very broad-based portfolio with a significant amount of breadth and depth associated with the kind of science that the HESI committees are currently addressing. So what can HESI committees do? We can participate in experimental laboratory programs. These HESI committees can participate in data sharing. Third, database development, population, and analysis. Fourth, to identify and populate expert panels. And these discussion forums of leading experts lead to white papers and ultimately to identifying the best practices involved in safety assessment. And finally, scientific outreach, workshops and publications. This is really the bread and butter of HESI committees, these workshops and the resulting publications. We're going to be engaged in workshop design and execution, ultimately, again, consistent with our legal charter, leading to peer-reviewed publications. And I should emphasize that all publications from HESI committees must undergo an internal peer review process before they're allowed to be submitted to the journals for review. This HESI peer review process occurs under the direction of the public trustees on our board, and it really is something that is intended to improve the quality of these publications, and to ensure that the HESI Science is the very best that it can be. But it's important that the HESI publications, having satisfied the internal peer review, must then go forward with the journal peer review process. So in this light, we believe that our output really has undergone a significant amount of quality control and quality assurance in terms of ensuring that we've got the best possible science. And one important qualifier, HESI is not a laboratory facility. All of the lab science that's conducted by HESI committees is performed either by the participating organizations or it is outsourced, and all of the laboratory activities is managed under the direction of the HESI staff, who are responsible for each of those committees that we've just summarized. The HESI Scientific Committee has the following characteristics: leadership drawn from academic, government, and industry. Again, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but this is in fact that tripartite approach that we've highlighted, and it really is firmly embedded in everything that HESI does. All of our committees have got an assigned HESI staff scientist to provide management support. All of our staff have got degrees in a variety of different scientific areas. They're all published. They all regularly participate in scientific meetings like the SOT, the ACT, teratology, and a variety of other scientific meetings. All of our committees have got a defined mission statement that guides the committee activities, and these may be supported by multiple different scientific projects to support that mission. And finally, all of our committees have funding partners between 5 and 20. These usually come from industry that pay an annual fee to support the committee's research, project management, workshops, etc. And again, you've highlighted the summary of the various technical and project committees that are currently a part of the HESI portfolio. Some of the information identified on this slide would also be found on the HESI website under that particular committee's identifier. A HESI Scientific Committee operates by the following types of operating principles. The committee leadership sets and manages its own program design, establishes its own budgets, its own timelines, and its deliverables with input from all participating organizations. HESI Scientific Committees operate by periodic teleconferences, web meetings, and face-to-face meetings that occur throughout the year. There is frequent electronic communication to develop ideas, to share data, and manuscripts. All of the committees have got password-protected portals so that those participants on the committee can actually be engaged in sharing idea in some of these electronic portals. And finally, all HESI Scientific committees operate via the support from HESI staff scientists to facilitate communication and to ensure fulfillment of deadlines and deliverables. Bottom line from this slide, if I could emphasize it, is that all of the HESI committees really requires a team effort. We recognize that all of the participants, with the exception of the staff, are volunteers, but nonetheless, all of the volunteers have a great deal of enthusiasm and passion for the HESI Scientific committees, and we attempt to keep the progress moving forward and to reach the deliverables and the milestones as identified by each of the committee leadership. How are HESI projects funded? This is the resource for public-private collaborations. And the bottom line is that most, but not all, project funds come from the private sector, that is our industrial sponsors. But it's important to emphasize that there is substantial in-kind contributions from all participating scientists in the form of labor, laboratory resources, data, leadership, and guidance toward the preparation of the definitive output, which frequently is in the form of a peer-reviewed publication. Okay, moving on to the next part of the outline, which is the organizational governance. HESI is governed by a board of trustees, and our commitment to tripartite extends from the scientific programs through to the organizational governance. HESI's board consists right now of 31 people who provide fiscal and strategic oversight and guidance to the organization as a whole. These 31 individuals are well recognized on an international scale scientists, and the HESI board consists right now of 16 representatives from the public and academic sectors and 15 representatives from industry. And the board is overseen by a public member of the board. In this case, it's currently Dr. Kendall Wallace from the University of Minnesota. The Board of Trustees is also led by an executive committee, which is a subset of the Board of Trustees that consists of all of the officers plus a number of members at large. There is a public and academic chair, as I've already emphasized. And then there's myself, a full-time executive director on staff to provide additional leadership. And I'm an ex officio member of both the board and the executive committee. And this is a list of the current 31 trustees. You can see that, again, it reflects the nature of HESI and that it reflects academic, government, and industry scientists. You can also see that this board reflects the fact that HESI is the global branch. We have trustees not only from the United States, but also from Europe and from Japan. And I'd just like to highlight a few of the individuals listed on this slide. First off, in the far left column is Dr. Mark Bonifay from Santa Fe Aventis. Mark is currently the president of the HESI Assembly. Moving to the next column to the right, at the top of that list is Dr. Dennis Devlin from Exxon Biomedical Sciences Incorporated. Dennis right now serves as the vice president of HESI. At the bottom of that second to the left column is Dr. Ron Hines from the Medical College of Wisconsin. Ron currently serves as the vice chair. The far column to the right, you can see the second from the bottom is Dr. Kendall Wallace. And as I've mentioned, Dr. Wallace is currently the chair of the HESI Board of Trustees. There are a couple of other officers. In the third column at the top, Dr. Norb Kaminsky from the Michigan State University currently serves as the HESI treasurer. And again, at that last column, just above Dr. Wallace, is Dr. Jan Willem van der Laan from the National Institute of Public Health and Environment in the Netherlands. And Dr. van der Laan is currently the HESI secretary. So again, we're very much blessed to have a board of directors, a board of trustees of this caliber and of this level of engagement. Really goes a long way toward ensuring HESI's sustainability and success. The strategic oversight for HESI, the trustees constitute a number of board committees. I've already mentioned the fact that the scientific program is reviewed under the aegis of the Program Strategy and Stewardship Committee. And as mentioned on this slide, it has oversight for the size, scope, and efficacy of HESI's scientific program portfolio. The PSSC manages an internal peer review process for all HESI work products and makes recommendations on the disposition of committees. All of the HESI committees undergo a PSSC review on a regular scale, either 2 or 3 years, every 2 or 3 years. Secondly, we have the Communications and Outreach Committee. This is led by the HESI Secretary. Again, that's Dr. Jan Willem van der Laan. And this committee develops approaches and materials to share HESI outcomes and impacts, and to build a communication and outreach strategy to build new partnerships. Finally, a very important committee is the Finance Committee, and this committee is chaired by the HESI Treasurer, and as I mentioned from the last slide, that currently is Dr. Norbert Kaminsky from Michigan State University. And the Finance Committee has the very important task of maintaining oversight for the HESI budget. And lastly, the Membership Development Committee. This committee develops strategies to recruit new member companies and new industry sectors. The Organizational Strategic Plan. As I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, we are on the last-minute planning stages to revise and refresh our strategic plan. And it's listed here as taking place in June of 2011. In fact, this strategic retreat will take place on the evening of Monday, June 6th, and be an all-day affair on Tuesday, June 7th. But our strategic plan really provides guidance on and accountability for the organizational objectives. We last refreshed our strategic plan back in 2006. That strategic plan was designed to lead us for the next 3 years to 2009. And last year, we decided that it was still an important and relevant strategic plan, so we renewed it to 2010. But again, we will be revisiting and refreshing the HESI strategic plan in just a few weeks. And this is a PDF that's been just cut and pasted into this slide. You can see there at the top is the HESI central vision, which is to strengthen HESI's global scientific contributions and impact on human health. And then going across the top in the blue boxes are three strategic objectives, three strategic priorities. Firstly, to increase the quality and value of HESI's scientific contribution. Then in the middle, to strengthen HESI's credibility and impact with key stakeholders. And the last column on the right, to strengthen HESI as a sustainable global organization. Then down at the bottom, providing, if you will, a foundation for all of the HESI strategic plan, are two additional strategic objectives or priorities. First is to ensure transparency of scientific and communication processes, and second, to continue to improve the organizational effectiveness of both HESI and the broader organization, the International Life Sciences Institute. I don't want to spend a lot of time with the yellow boxes underneath each of the strategic priorities, but these are the specific objectives. And it is my suspicion that that will be where we spend most of our effort on the upcoming strategic retreat in a couple of weeks. And that's to revisit and to refresh and to reorient those strategic objectives relative to the strategic priorities. But again, there's some additional information available about the HESI strategic plan on our website. The strategic oversight also includes the HESI Emerging Issues Steering Committee. And we're going to talk a little bit about the HESI Emerging Issues process in just a slide or two from here. But this EISC, or the Emerging Issues Steering Committee, again, derives its participation that are elected from the global HESI constituency. So we have participants on the EISC from the US, from Europe, and from Japan. And again, as is true of all of HESI's activities, the EISC is based on balanced participation, and that we have at least half academic or government scientists and half industry. The EISC oversees the process for the solicitation and selection of new emerging issue subcommittees by HESI. And in many ways, these emerging issue subcommittees are the forerunners of most of the HESI scientific programs. And if you think back on that earlier slide where we listed the HESI scientific portfolio, The current Emerging Issues Subcommittee that is a part of that portfolio really is that project that's devoted toward a better understanding of the causality associated with epidemiological studies. So the epidemiological studies activity is in fact our current Emerging Issues Subcommittee. This is just the Emerging Issues process. And I'm going to start at the left hand in the box labeled number 1. A new project idea or ideas are solicited via an annual survey of the global HESI constituency. There are several hundred names on this listserv of what we call our HESI key contacts. We invite individuals from either academic, government, industry, or other sectors of the scientific community to provide project ideas. It has always been our intent to keep that process very user-friendly, so it's not a lot of writing. What we look for is basically a description of the idea, a little bit of some of the ways that HESI could help to move that particular science along, an attempt to try to identify what other activities are underway to address that particular scientific activity, and lastly, a list of possible academic, government, and industry scientists who would be inclined to find that particular project idea to be of interest. The Emerging Issues Steering Committee will review those proposals, which basically that between steps 1 and 2, we're looking at about a 6-month. That's the distribution of the survey, a couple of quick reminders to folks to get their proposal ideas back to the HESI staff. Those are assimilated into a document that captures all of the various proposals. And the Emerging Issues Steering Committee will meet in a face-to-face meeting to review those proposals. And we get anywhere between 10 and 30 proposals each time we distribute the survey. And they're going to pick, the Emerging Issues Steering Committee would pick the top 2 to 5 of these proposals. And there's a variety of criteria that they use, which we can talk about later if there's some interest. But this takes about 2 months to convene the various components of the proposals in the selection process. The top proposals that are selected by the EISC, the 2 to 5, are then presented during the Emerging Issues Scientific Session at the HESI annual meeting. So we'll be convening at the HESI annual meeting in Alexandria, Virginia in just a few weeks, the day after the strategic planning session, so starting on June 8th. We will have the HESI Emerging Issues Scientific Session will take place in the morning of June 8th. And each of the proposals that are selected will have a scientist that will talk about the extent, breadth, and depth of that science. And then there'll be a second presentation for each of those proposals that really talks about what role HESI could play in trying to advance the science associated with that particular proposal. So it gives a very good kind of a 1-2 punch. On the first hand, kind of identifying to a greater extent the nature of the science, and then secondly, in a very practical way, trying to get our arms around what HESI could do to try to advance that science. The fourth step is to have the HESI members or sponsors and all of the various stakeholders to vote on the topics. And this is again conducted via another survey. And here we're asking them to really judge the quality of the proposals that were presented at the annual meeting. Those slide sets that were used at the annual meeting will be made available on the HESI website. But we're asking in this second survey to have our key contacts both judge the quality of the science and the level of their interest in becoming engaged, either to provide financial support for that activity or to provide, and importantly, the sweat equity. Again, the EISC, the Emerging Issues Steering Committee, will review and vote on the various proposals, and they consider the sectors in terms of who responded to the survey, who indicated some interest in providing dollars, who indicated some intent on providing some sweat equity. And here the sectors are, again, the industry, academic, and government sectors. Again, one of the primary criteria used in selecting any new component to the HESI scientific portfolio is our ability to develop and sustain this public-private partnerships. We will also factor in the availability of staff time to manage these projects, the likelihood of success. In other words, we're not going to select a project that really would be 10 years before we really see any benefit from it. But most of our projects do go on for several years. And in fact, the EISC will recommend 1 to 2 of those topics to be added to the HESI scientific portfolio as a new subcommittee to join the one that's currently there, again, the causality and epidemiological studies. So the benefits of HESI's emerging issue process. First, it allows HESI to remain current and to evolve by bringing in new programs to address new issues. Second, the EI process allows for broad oversight and consideration of strategic goals of HESI Science. And importantly, there are no fees required for participation in the emerging issue programs during the first year. We believe that this reduces the barriers to new science and that you're not having to build a funding base to basically get these projects off the ground and running. And importantly, and as a reflection of the value and sustainability of the EI process, many EI subcommittees have evolved into long-standing and self-supported project and technical committees. And just a few of them are highlighted in the parens there. The Biomarkers Committee, Genomics, Bioaccumulation. All 3 of these activities actually started as emerging issue subcommittees and have now been around in critical parts of the HESI scientific portfolio for a number of years as self-sustaining project and technical committees. Resources at initiation. This was a new mechanism established in 2009 to respond to the following characteristics. The idea that we would have components of the HESI scientific community that would be willing to put forth funding to address a well-defined and time-sensitive project proposals. So this is a second and alternative mechanism to bring projects into the HESI scientific portfolio that is independent of the Emerging Issues Steering Committee. So this is a second process to add new activities to the HESI portfolio. The HESI RAI, Resources at Initiation process, is depicted on this slide. And again, starting at the left-hand corner in box number 1, HESI stakeholders, and that would be government, academic, and industry scientists, could bring a topic proposal forward to the HESI staff. The proposal must meet some very simple criteria. There must be funding pledged for at least the first year. There must be a demonstrable tripartite interest, and the topic must be of relevance to HESI and consistent with the HESI core operating principles. The HESI staff time must also be available and would be judged at that time. So within a week, the HESI staff would determine if those various criteria are met. If they are, then that particular proposal is submitted to the EISC, the Emerging Issues Steering Committee leadership, who review the proposal for general scientific merit. And again, they use many of the same criteria that are used in the selection of emerging issues proposals, but that is strictly to maintain some consistency in the types of projects that are brought into the HESI portfolio. And it's really the intent that these RAI proposals don't compete with the EI proposals that are brought forward through the EI process. The third step in this RAI process is to have the board executive committee consider the staff and the EISC recommendations, and they will basically take that proposal and approve it or deny it, and that information will be conveyed back to the sponsors within 3 to 4 weeks. So if you think about the EISC process, which was depicted here, you can see that this process can take 6 months, 2 months, 2 months, 1 month. It really is a very deliberative and protracted process that takes several months to reach its final conclusion. Contrast that with the RAI proposal process, which is done in a matter of about 6 weeks. We think that this enables HESI to be very nimble to address those projects for which funding can be identified and for which a core group can bring the particular project proposal forward to the HESI staff, EISC leadership, and the executive committee to judge its impact on the HESI portfolio. So getting involved, this is the final step in the outline for today's webinar. Participation in HESI. If you're an industrial scientist, you're eligible to join HESI by paying an annual fee. And the eligibility really is just a reflection of the types of industrial sectors. And this is something that would be listed and very clearly spelled out on the HESI membership application form that's available on our website. The fees to join HESI are based on the global sales of that corporation on a sliding scale. And those monies are used to support the EI process and its programs, the strategic board programs and outreach, the membership outreach services, a component of the infrastructure of the HESI office, and finally a component of the HESI staff. Companies that join HESI may choose to join one or more scientific programs, and all programs except the first-year emerging issue subcommittees require a modest amount of additional annual contributions for support. And importantly, the extent or the level of that committee assessment is really determined by the committee members and reflects the nature of the work that is anticipated to occur over the next year. Participation in HESI by academic and government scientists. Individual scientists from academic and government or research organizations may participate in HESI programs. You can't join HESI as an individual, but you can certainly be added to the list of participants for a given committee simply by contacting the HESI staff. Scientists from academic and government sectors are not required to pay dues, but are expected to be engaged and to provide in-kind support to the programs in which they participate. Again, participation in all of HESI activities is predicated around the commitment of the members of that committee to maintaining an active engagement. Participating in HESI. All scientists participating in HESI are required to uphold the standards of transparency, scientific rigor, ethics, and collegiality that are at the core of HESI's operations. And the last slide, becoming involved. If you have an interest in any of the projects and programs, all you need to do is to identify those programs either from the website, from our annual report, or from our newsletters. We want you to consider opportunities to partner on the study design, data generation, data interpretation, shared funding, and/or analysis. And you can contact the HESI staff for more information. Again, you can either find the individual staff member who's responsible for the specific committee or program that you have some interest in on the website, www.hesiglobal.org, or you can contact Ms. Cindy Nobles at hesiglobal.org. And that completes the webinar.